Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to give everyone a few quick seconds to log in and get settled, and then we'll get started. All right, as people get logged on, I just want to introduce myself first off. My name is Kara Heifel, and thank you for joining us today. I'm with the Illinois Restaurant Association, and today's webinar is on marketing strategies for growing and maintaining your brand. And during today's webinar, we will hear from experts at Turnkey Hospitality Group and from Kinship, our favorite PR firm. Today's webinar will be in English, it's live, and it also will be in Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. Please use the interpretation button in your toolbar to use this technique here. So this program today will also be sent out to everyone. And we are doing this today with our partners and panelists here at the Illinois Restaurant Association, alongside the Cook County Small Business Source. This program was initially established to help small businesses emerge from the pandemic intact and ready for growth. There are many services that you can get from the Cook County Small Business Source from us at the IRA as a partner. It's free, easy to sign up. You can get one-on-one business advising, events, webinars, all of this stuff is free, and I highly recommend you sign up if you haven't already at Cook County smallbizwithaz.org. Again, it's super easy, and there's a lot of events that are provided through this source, as well as us at the IRA. Myself and all of the staff at the IRA remains a resource to you that are free as well. So we can help you in your small business, and especially the hospitality industry, as we go forward and make sure that we're ready for growth. And again, I just wanted, before we get started here, if you have questions, please put them in the chat bar in the Q&A button, and we will get to them at the end. If we don't get to everyone, we will be sure to send over the recording as well as the deck, and we will have all of our contact information if we aren't able to get all the questions today. So before we get started, I want to introduce our panelists today. We have James Masello, who is a marketing director at Kinship, our PR firm. We have Michelle Dupretti, who is a managing partner at Turnkey Hospitality Group, as well as Colin Pearson, managing partner at Turnkey Hospitality Group. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists and turn it over to Michelle and Colin. Take it away.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I hope that everybody's doing well on this fine day. What's today? Today's Thursday.
Today is Thursday.
Yeah, I have to remind myself sometimes of what date it is. So we're so excited to be here with you today and welcome you and say thank you for being here with us. So let's dive in, shall we?
Yes, let's do.
Okay, so we're going to start by introducing ourselves a little bit. You can advance to the next slide. I am Michelle Dupretti. Sitting to my left is my husband, Colin Pearson. I'm going to start with my introduction, and then I'll throw it over to him. We do everything, in addition to being married, we pretty much do everything together now, including presentations. So we're going to see how this goes today. I am the managing partner, as Carol already mentioned, of Turnkey Hospitality Group, which is basically the restaurant group that holds my family's 82-year-old restaurant, Gene and Giorgetti. So I'm third generation of Gene and Giorgetti. You can advance to the next slide. That's me. That's my Instagram on the bottom, and also my website, because in addition to being the managing partner of Gene and Giorgetti, I'm also a wedding and event producer, and I've had that business independently for the last 15 years. My husband has his own business as well, and he'll tell you a little bit about that when he talks about himself. So you can go ahead and advance to the next slide. This is a little bit in a nutshell of who I am and what I use on a consistent basis to help me market and basically sell our brands, with a focus today, obviously, on the restaurant, which is Gene and Giorgetti. So as I mentioned, I'm third generation here. Gene was my grandfather, my mother's father. My parents bought the restaurant in 1989 when Gene passed away, and have had it ever since. So I'm currently the spokesperson for the restaurant. I'm also a gardener. In addition to being a restaurateur, I'm an equestrian, daughter, wedding planner. Crisis management is something I think that anyone on this session today probably understands when you're in the restaurant industry. I'm also a knight, which is very cool. That happened recently. A decision maker, a leader, a creative entrepreneur, a dreamer, and a doer. And I use all of these things to help me better market my business. So I thought it was important that you kind of get an understanding a little bit of who I am. So next is your turn.
So my name is Colin Pearson, and I'm also with Gene and Giorgetti and Turnkey Hospitality, and my Instagram is listed below. And I have 20 years of experience as a professional photographer. I have worked in professional sports, fashion, weddings, and frankly, weddings is actually how I met my wife. After we had a fire in 2019, I was brought into the business to help out, and now I am a plumber. I am Toast POS support. I am tech support. I am sometimes an electrician with electrocution. General contractor, absolutely. Creator of wine lists, travel agent, you name it, I do it. Oh, and a barista. I have done that as well.
Coffee.
So I've had a shorter time period to learn about the brand and to be in it. But it certainly has been very exciting to take this on and learn as much as possible about it in such a short amount of time. Which leads us to our next slide, which is actually about Gene and Giorgetti. And some of you may know the brand, others of you may not, but it is located in River North. It is housed in a building from 1874, so it is 149 years old this year. It was actually built with scrap wood that was salvaged from the Great Chicago Fire.
When we weren't supposed to be building wood frame buildings anymore.
Yes.
And there's only about 3 or 4 left in the city. The reason we think this is important is because it actually plays into who we are as a restaurant. It's not just that the restaurant is 82 years old and is really steeped in Chicago history. We're actually in a building that is built from Chicago and was part of the rebuild of Chicago after one of its defining moments. And that plays into our branding. If you actually, Teresa, if you can go back a slide, something that we use quite frequently now in our messaging, you'll notice underneath the logo, Chicago Steakhouse since 1941. For a long time, this messaging was Chicago's finest. There's been times, various iterations over the years, and we feel currently it's not up to us to tell people that we're the best. It's up to people to tell us. And so we just like to say we are Chicago Steakhouse since 1941, just so you know. That's a little bit of that intentional marketing that we're going to get into, but that's kind of what that is. You can go forward again, Teresa. Thank you.
So here's our dining room. We're not going to take you on a tour, but we wanted to have some context of what the restaurant actually is. It is one that has housed people that are both famous and infamous, and is really based on the foundation of Michelle's grandparents, Gene and Ida, who started the business with a gentleman named Giorgetti in 1941, and they were best friends.
Why don't you let me do this part?
Okay, you can go right ahead.
Yeah,
You've been doing it a while.
Yeah. So Teresa, if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, and that's our outside, and then to the next one, because this will be the relevant part. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, the black and white photo are my grandparents. That's Gene and his wife, Ida. At their 45th wedding anniversary. Over to the right, the photo of the two couples. The gentleman sitting is Giorgetti. The gentleman standing is Gene. So as my husband mentioned, they were good friends. Gene was front of house, very dynamic. Giorgetti was quiet and a chef, liked to be back of house. This is, again, going back to what we were just talking about on the logo. This is part of our foundational messaging. So in addition to having the building that has history, the business that has history, these are the two Italian immigrants that were in search of a better life that came and began building this restaurant in 1941, where it still stands today. This is what they look like, and you'll see this all over our walls. You'll see it in our social platforms, on our website. These are imagery. This is imagery that's very important to us, because our job at Gene and Giorgetti is to guard and protect the legacy while evolving the brand. And I think that's part of the reason why, I hope that's part of the reason why we're here today, because coming on board as the third generation, I didn't have the opportunity that maybe many of you have had to launch a restaurant. We've had to look and say, okay, what is our story? What is our history? How do we use it? What's relevant? What do we protect? And where do we grow? And how do we do that mindfully? So it all starts with these folks here in this photo. So and if you go to the next one, just to give you a little more of the color of the family story. So the photo to the left is my dad and my grandfather, both of whom have been at the helm of the restaurant at various times in the Arctic Circle fishing. That apparently is how you dressed in the 70s to go fishing in the Arctic Circle, unclear. But I very much tells you who they were, because like style was very important. And of course, my parents and my grandparents together on the photo next to that. So that's a little bit of color into who we are as a family and kind of the background coming into the restaurant. If you advance to the next slide, you'll see a little of when we talk about the evolution. The patio was a big component of that. The menu evolutions that we did were a component of that, and how we marketed. So these three photos kind of really beautifully tell that story that we're going to get more into now. And my favorite is, if you look at the photo of the patio, you can kind of see the train iconically passing above the sign, that sign that's been forever there. And then of course, the new addition of like these beautiful umbrellas, really creating a sidewalk cafe, very inspired by like a European restaurant that's like your little neighborhood place. So these were some of the starting points that my husband and I looked at during COVID, with a huge assistance and major nod, by the way, to the Illinois Restaurant Association, because they were immensely supportive through that process. So, so that's where we're going to begin. So if you want to go, yep, there you go. So
Very simply, know your brand, grow your brand, and we're going to give you 3 ways to do that. And we think that if providing more than that in such a short amount of time is going to be too much information, this is something where you could take some tidbits away and apply it to your own brands.
well, and James is really the expert. I don't want to wait too long to hear what he has to say, because I'm excited for that.
I am too.
But we do want to give you something valuable based on our our experiences and our insights. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So what is branding? It's important to know what you're talking about before you start branding and marketing. So just the basic definition, what is branding? So branding involves your identity, your personality, and your values, among other things. But these are 3 really key elements to define what is branding. So questions to ask yourself to help determine your brand. What are your core principles and values? For example, for us, it's being family owned and operated. It's protecting our tradition, really maintaining integrity with our ingredients and our processes, and how we treat our team, our messaging, our service, being classic, but still being at the forefront of what is good service. Those are the kinds of things we ask ourselves on a constant basis. We didn't just ask once, what inspired you to open your business? So for those that are new to the restaurant business, this is a really important question. Those that have been around and are maybe looking at a rebrand or a refresh, it's what is inspiring you now? Where are you at now? What are you looking at now? My father used to always say, in order to know where you're going, you need to know where you're coming from. And I think that's a really key component to understanding your business. So where are you coming from? What were you? What was the answer to all of these questions before? And what are they now? Right. And within that realm of those questions, I think something that's so important is what makes you unique. Again, a personal example. When the restaurant opened in 1941, we were one of maybe 2 steakhouses in the city. Now you throw a rock, you hit a steakhouse, right, from our front door, which is beautiful because it tells us the genre is relevant still, which we love to hear. My grandfather always believed, and I tell this story at every opportunity, when a new restaurant would open, he would send a plant and not fresh flowers, because he believed in longevity. He liked the idea of something new coming into the neighborhood. He wished it well. He wanted it to grow because he thought new business was good for all business, right? But with that in mind, in that realm of new business, what sets your business apart? What makes you unique? What's the thing, for example, in this beautiful world of restaurants now in Illinois and Chicago, specifically where we are, there are many, many steakhouses. So what makes Jean and Giorgetti different, say, for example, from a Gibson's or a Fioretta or Maple and Ash? What sets us apart? Just like something is going to set them apart. And you have to answer that question and know it, because that's a core part of branding. What do you want to come to mind when someone thinks of your brand? Also, key component. Just like, for example, that age-old expression, when you're not in the room, and what people say about you when you're not there is really who you are. It's the same thing as your business. When you're not in the room, what are people saying about your business? What comes to mind? You can have ownership of that. You can cultivate that messaging. So when you're not there, people have messaging you created, right? And that you've kind of driven. And how do you want customers to describe your brand? From a very personal standpoint, for me, there is this way that I dream of people talking about Jean and Giorgetti, and it's with this wash of nostalgia, where people are like, oh, I love it there. And by the way, have you had the pasta recently? Because it's knockout. See, that combination of nostalgic, but also evolutionary. And that's really important to me. So that's a little bit on branding. Kyle, you want to talk about marketing?
So marketing. So how do we take your brand and we drive business? And it's important to differentiate between the two, because one kind of leads the train for the other. And branding really is about who you are. It's your identity. And there's various ways to do that. And I'm sure James is going to have 17,000 different things I'm going to be writing down myself in order to relate to this. But marketing really is what draws your customer base. And we use various tools to do that. But marketing is the engine to the train, and that's what's going to drive you forward. It's important to make this differentiation between the two, because your focus should be on both, not at the same time, though.
Well,
I think but I think that it's important to focus on branding, focus on marketing, and then using both of those things to drive business. And that's very important too. So let's move forward. Awesome. So next to this beautiful plate of carbonara, it's important to define and cultivate who, what, why makes you special.
Right.
Absolutely.
I want to say one quick thing.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
Once you know what branding is, which is your messaging, and you realize marketing is basically the tool within which you sell your brand, right? And you get customers in the door. I think it's really important also to understand that they do kind of interface a little
Absolutely.
bit once you're there.
Absolutely.
And this next slide that we're talking about right now, define and cultivate. Nope, go back one. Sorry, Teresa. We're still in the, yep. So again, going back to the who, what, and why of what makes you special. Who makes you special? Why are you special? And with those answers, what you're hoping to do is introduce yourself to new audiences, right? Especially if you're launching a restaurant or a business, that's all you're doing is everybody's new. If you're not, then you're trying to find those new customers, right? You're reinforcing the brand within the industry that you're already established in. If you're already an established brand, reminding customers, like this is something we deal with a lot. People are like, oh my God, Jean and Giorgetti, I haven't been there in years. And we're like, oh, okay, so we got to focus on that, right? We have to make sure that people remember we're out there. It's the new customer coming in for the first time is as important as someone saying to us they haven't been in since the 90s and they came back and wow, was it an experience? Because there's so many potential customers out there. So it's really important to know.
Absolutely.
And I think also optimizing brand awareness kind of goes back to the new audience and reinforcing the brand within the industry, and also just in general, optimizing awareness. So people, like, for example, there may be someone not in your city, in Australia, who follows your Instagram or loves you on TikTok and is going to tell someone, oh my God, you're going to Chicago, you have to check out this restaurant. Or they come in for work and we get this a lot. People are like, I followed you for years. I'm finally coming into the city and I can't wait to come in and eat at your restaurant. That's when you know what you're doing is working, because you get a little bit of that interaction and that play, which is so important in this world. Something that I always tell our team, right, is when we first opened in 1941, the first touch point was literally the front door. As people were putting their hand on the doorknob, that was the first touch point into the business. Over the last 82 years, That's now like the 12th touch point, because they're in your restaurant before they're ever in your restaurant. They're in there via Google or your Instagram or your website or a review that was written or an article that was published. They're there, they're looking at your menu online, they're seeing your food photos. So they're in your restaurant long before they're in your restaurant. So really having an idea of what that is so key. And then the secret also is making sure that what you put out there is also what you do in here, right? And that's something, that's a challenge, to be really transparent. That's a challenge that we face on a constant basis, because Colin and I are like, oh, like the photo you see right now of this beautiful carbonara, we're like, oh, this is great. And it's so artistic and the lighting's perfect. But our restaurant's really dark and it's got a lot of wood paneling. So when people come in and they take food photos on their cell phone, every day, Colin and I are like, oh my God, what is this photo? Right? Because it's not professionally lit and it's not artistically twirled. And so we're like, oh my, OMG. So understanding a little bit of the importance of what you create and disseminate out into the world, and then also what you have in the brand too, and making sure that that's really consistent. For us, positioning our brand as being transparent and honest and energized has had a direct impact on our evolution. So by doing the things we're talking about back into 2020,
yeah.
when the whole world was sort of like WTF, excuse my French, right? No one knew what was what. We used it as an opportunity to sit down and say, okay, what are our systems, our practices, our policies, our procedure? What do we look like? What are all the touch points, and how do we improve them since we don't have anything else to do? So, and that was where this all started. And since then, this new infusion of messaging that we've been using has helped us to accomplish this. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. This is you, 100%.
This is me?
This is all you, because you
Okay.
take all the photos and you do all the things.
Okay, so that leads us to content and producing quality content. And that comes from a couple of different places, meaning social, digital, and other, and what I like to call old school methods. Obviously, you have your social media platforms, you have webcasts like YouTube or YouTube Shorts, YouTube Live, et cetera, blogs, which are still incredibly important, and email blasts as well. And then you have public relations and community relations. Now, social media platforms, obviously, we know that Facebook, Instagram are the two biggest ones, but TikTok is actually one that we've seen work incredibly well to bring in a younger audience. And it's funny because sometimes we'll have people walk in and they've been coming to Gene and Giorgetti for many years, and they'll say, wow, the crowd is a lot younger. And I think that's,
Yes,
and we say, yes, absolutely.
Yes, exactly,
Yes,
James.
James is like,
They're
yes.
like, yes, thank you.
It's like, we know. And the reason is because they are finding us via different methods than were traditionally available. Those old school methods like print advertising, or maybe in like a Choose Chicago
PR
book,
strategies.
PR strategies. And what really has happened is that we've seen that shift, and it's been a quantifiable shift for us. And that's really where you can start to see the ROI come into play. Email blasts are another place where it's incredibly important to get your message out, but also to talk about what's going on in your restaurant and in your business. You're able to highlight different things where you're doing an activation, or potentially you need to move some product.
Right.
And it's incredibly important to keep doing those.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course you can.
I personally do all of our email blasts.
Yes.
And I find that when I'm writing the email blasts, I think about a couple of different ways, like informative, more of like a newsletter. If there's something promotional, do I not have anything going on at the time? I just want to remind people we're here. There's a couple of different ways. I pay attention to the metrics on all of these platforms, because it's really important, like, you know, how many first-time visitors are on your website? What does your Instagram interaction look like? All of that's important, and Colin's touched on that. I also want to say something though. So in the other category, when it comes to public relations, community relations, it is so important. And I am I am 44, so I have one foot in new generation and one foot in older classic. I'm going to say classic generation. And I think the importance of public relations is so important. Working with a PR firm has taught me so much. And I'm not saying, you know, that everyone can afford to do that on retainer forever, but even for a specific strategy or something you're doing in the restaurant, a launch or maybe a quarter, there are various kinds of PR firms out there that work within hospitality. I'm sure James can give you more information on that, that we've learned so much from, because it is important. Nobody speaks for your brand like you do. And knowing that knowledge is so important, but having someone come in and look at your mosaic of your brand and say, like, pulling one piece out and being like, this is a potential story. That's great, because those kinds of stories, digital, like, for example, when you're featured online now, Eater and Reader and these things, there's SEO to that can drive traffic to your website. Choose Chicago drives a ton of traffic to our website. It's a really big deal. The Illinois Restaurant Association is responsible for traffic coming to our website. TikTok is really responsible. Pinterest, as crazy as this sounds, we have a Pinterest account and we Pinterest regularly for the restaurant, because Pinterest now factors into SEO. And so all these things kind of link up, right? And you have this, going back to what I was saying about the old school, which is classic. I'm going to say classic. They take all of that and then they start creating these purposeful, intentional stories that kick your narrative up a notch. So it's nice to know social, digital, marketing, branding. It's nice to know all of that, but don't be afraid right now. If you're like, oh my God, this is more information than my brain can handle, that's okay. That's why there's experts out there. We learned a lot of this by trial and major error.
Yes.
And we've learned a lot of this by relying on experts. Like, we have a consultant we work with. We work with a PR firm. We've worked with marketing companies, because sometimes we don't even know what we know or what we need to grow. So just keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, here's the key takeaway from this particular moment. Efforts that result in increasing your traffic will increase lead generation, which ultimately leads to conversion. And what is conversion? In very layman's terms, butts in seats. Because here's the thing, for a restaurant, if you have butts in seats, if your sales are there, you can figure out the rest. Sales, that's for us, we're always like, okay, do we have bodies? Are butts in seats? What are our covers? Are people coming in? Are they investing in a Gene and Giorgetti experience? If the answer is yes, the rest we can work on, but that's always on the forefront of priorities for us. So you can go to the next slide.
So this is a big one. 69% of millennials are posting photos of their food on Instagram.
Well, now there's people after millennials.
And now
like,
we're,
now,
yes, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's
Not
even
old,
more
grown up.
classic.
Yeah, classic.
Classic.
Yes.
We're going to go back to classic. So
Clearly I'm old and don't know how to say anything generationally, but that's
so
okay.
of all the Instagrams that millennials, and probably more so from the generation past millennials, that means that 2/3 of people are posting their food. That's huge. And so what that means is that if you go to the next slide, the place where we're getting that information is on social. So half of all of diners go to a restaurant after seeing it on social media, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest or
Don't forget Threads.
or your mom's Facebook or whatever it may be.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the list is endless.
Yes, absolutely. That's huge. So what does that mean? We eat with our eyes. And as a photographer, I can tell you there is a difference between a cell phone photo and a professional photo. So quality content really drives our new business. And that is so important these days, because hiring professionals to take photos and do reels or videos for your brand, even it doesn't have to be a massive photo shoot for, tens of thousands of dollars. It can be a couple of $100 every couple of months to get you enough content to bridge you to the next season of your new menu or whatever it may be. And then the other side of that is influencer marketing. Influencer marketing is something my wife has brought into Gene and Giorgetti for the first time, I think about 3.5 years ago.
Really, the last year and a half.
And really the last year and a half, we've made that something that we do quite often. And it is incredibly impactful because it gets us to more audiences that are targeted for the influencer themselves. And so they can talk directly to their audience about an experience at our restaurant, and it provides a true kind of overarching understanding of what we are.
really important thing with regards to that. So mindful selection, right? We introduced brunch a couple years ago at the restaurant. Saturday and Sunday, we offer brunch during the summer, especially outside on the sidewalk patio. So fun, right? Not a lot of people know about it. So it's an element of our brand that doesn't have the same amount of awareness as the fact that, for example, we have steaks. We experienced this when we also started making our own pasta. This was something people didn't know. So we have these little components like, okay, how do we increase awareness? These influencers with their audiences have helped us do that. We've utilized this summer, for example, a very targeted approach to increasing awareness with brunch by inviting influencers to come in on the patio, enjoying the brunch menu and really talking up brunch. We've actually said no to influencers coming in and doing dinner because we wanted to focus on brunch. And so we work with a PR firm who helps us with our overall story, messaging management. And then we kind of pick and choose these things and we tie in all of that via the website, blogs, all of the various places. And that's something that's really worked well for us, is utilizing our relationship with influencers to help target like niche components where the brand needs a little more awareness. I also think it's important, Colin, because this is something you've really focused on before we're done. Talk a little bit about when we first, so Colin and I are what I like to call reluctant restaurateurs. I'm an only child. So my parents basically, all their eggs were in my basket. Let's just hope we don't mess it up, right? Yikes, no pressure. When we first got into the brand, one of the things we noticed was the Google Maps and the Apple Maps and a lot of these listing sites were at the mercy of the people who post on them versus us owning them as a business. This is so important. It's so important for your own health of your website and your branding and your messaging, but knowing and understanding how to take ownership of a Google page or an Apple Maps page allows you to post your own photos. You can promote there, like we've done wine dinners and posted menus, holiday menus, any kind of thing we're promoting, we put there and we get traffic from it. And it actually helps, it integrates into SEO, it increases awareness and exposure. And that's been a really simple, but really effective thing. I know you want to say something about that.
Yes. So, when I go to a different city, if I'm doing work in a different town, one thing I do if I don't necessarily know what's around me is first of all, I ask other people, where should I eat? But then the next thing I do, if I'm in a pinch or something like that, is I'll go straight into Apple Maps and I'll type in restaurants and I'll see what's around me. And then it's a feast of your eyes from there. And so if you have great imagery on there and you harness the business page for Google Maps and for Apple Maps, what you're doing is you're only helping your brand, because that SEO on the backside is going to be that much more important in the future as these Apple Maps and Google Maps start to integrate more editorial. For instance, I think Infatuation works with Apple to do special cards and Apple Maps related to the best restaurants in Tennessee, the best restaurants in Springfield, right. The best restaurants in Chicago, steakhouses, where can you get the best Asian food? And they're doing that more and more, and those things are becoming more important. So if you put those photos and that imagery out there and it's nice little bits of eye candy, there's more of a chance of it helping you. So I think that's important to
and this is my last thing I'm going to say for all of the restaurant owners out there. It's easy and effective and no judgment when you hire a social media manager or content creators or all of that for your brand. I wholeheartedly encourage that. We do it too. But as the people now in charge of this brand, there is nothing that goes out without my express approval. I see everything, no matter how much of a pain in my side it might be, because nobody speaks for your brand like you speak for your brand, just like no one speaks for yourself that same way. And I think in that vein too, one last little tidbit I'll leave you with before we transition over to James. Something we didn't talk about are review sites, right? Which is kind of the bane of my existence. OM Yelp, as I like to say all the time. But anyway, reviews are important to respond to. Thanking people who leave you nice reviews, asking, people who haven't, maybe for more information, take the conversation offline. What I have learned in my time doing this is when people go to review sites to see who you are and what you're about, they do notice if you respond. And addressing the good and the bad and even the ugly takes guts, and it's a smart part of marketing, because you're learning, you're not afraid to learn if you make a mistake, and you're not afraid to address someone who maybe isn't necessarily writing something that's accurate. So that would be my last piece of information we went over, so I apologize. And these are just 2 cute photos that we both like. We do a Pride art installation every year during Pride Month that I'm always really proud of. This was a balloon one we did a few years ago, and we now have steak boxes, so shameless plug.
Thank you so much, Colin and Michelle. That was
Thank you.
great. I'm still thinking about this carbonara photo.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I just want to turn it over to James before we run out of time here. Thank you, James, for joining us from Kinship. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kara. Well, first off, thank you to Kara, Teresa, the rest of the IRA team for having me on behalf of Kinship. Honored to be here with pros like Michelle and Colin. And Colin, I actually just moved into a new house, so I might need to pick your brain about some plumbing. So just keep that in mind. I've been told to speak slowly, so bear with me. It's sometimes hard for me to do. Speaking is fine, speaking slowly. So over the next couple of minutes, hopefully a few of these tips resonate with you all. Colin and Michelle did a great job of talking about a lot of what I'm going to talk about, to be completely honest, and loved hearing their presentation as well. So little background on myself. So for the better part of a decade, I've been immersed in the world of hospitality, if you will. A large part of that over at PR agencies. And then a large part of that also doing CPG work. So working on brands like Miller High Life, Coors Banquet, Coca-Cola portfolio, Coca-Cola Classic, Sprite, Sprite Zero as well. So with that start in the hospitality industry in PR out of school, I was working with a beer distributor. I was working with restaurants and then a smaller hotel group as well. From there, I went to work for an agency that represented 22 of Molson Coors brands, almost the entire portfolio. And there I was lucky enough to help launch the Chef Ambassador program in 2018. And funny enough, I'm working with some of those chefs again today. And during this whole time and working with Coke as well, I also helped launch the Meals platform with Gigi Hadid, which went out this spring, which was exciting. But there was something missing. It was the hospitality of everything. It was talking to the chefs every day, the restaurateurs, like Michelle and Colin, the bartenders, there was something missing. And that's how I knew I wanted to get back to Kinship, rekindle with an old colleague and mentor of mine. And that's where I am today. So a little bit on Kinship. We do it all here. And that's not saying that in a cocky or arrogant way by any means. It's just we're a full service marketing agency. So PR, digital marketing, programming, outreach from a marketing standpoint, and then of course, social and creative as well. We have an in-house graphic design team, a photographer, a videographer, people who are a lot talented than myself, to put it simply. And while most partners opt for all of these services, we're happy to help any way we can. So we offer a la carte services as well. So you just need PR, great, we got you covered. You just need social, great, we got you covered. And then the other pieces, digital marketing, usually fall in with the others. So enough about me and Kinship. Purpose of this call is to discuss marketing strategies for growing and maintaining your brand. So Michelle and Colin definitely tackled some of these already, and I'm glad we're on the same page with a lot of these, and they're beautiful slides as well. But before I get into these, I arrange these tips just by discipline. So you have social, digital, PR, general marketing, which we'll call classic marketing for Michelle. Not old school, just classic. I'm all about that. But I think the obvious call out here, everyone in the hospitality industry knows, and frankly, every person, place, thing, and small, large business was impacted over the pandemic 3 years ago. And here we are today. So good on us, especially Gene and Giorgetti's an institution like that. I come from an Italian-American family, and it's something my dad has taken us to over the years. So we'll have to connect on that later. But we found ways to grow and maintain over this period, and that's what's most important. And hopefully in this continuous new normal state, if anyone has wood, just knock on it, please. These tips should help. So diving into social, which Colin did a great job of covering, really. I'd be remiss to not start with it. Everything starts with social. Think social first. It is fundamental to your success, your business's success. Since Facebook came out early mid 2000s, social platforms have been slowly taking over. You have Instagram, which really rapidly progressed everything in the 20 teens. You had Twitter, which has been around, which served as your news feed. So now you were being influenced by brands on Instagram, catching up with your news on Twitter, staying in touch with your friends on Facebook. But with that, there was new ways to be influenced, and brands were doing it, people were doing it, and now we're seeing this whole army of influencers, which are so fundamental to your business. And people who influence us for good or for bad, that is so vital to your business's success, to have that influence, to have the right influencers, and to influence people through your brand itself on your social pages. So as a small business, it is fundamental and vital that you implement social media, get on social media channels if you're not already. So being on social, like I said, you've got to think social first, especially when attracting a new younger audience, which the other hosts can attest to. It's important. It's important. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, especially if you're brave enough to venture onto Twitter or Threads, or have the brand for it, please do. But Facebook, Instagram are the big ones, LinkedIn as well. And then TikTok with the emergence of that too. Give yourself time to be creative, especially speaking from the perspective of someone in social. You need to come up with a content calendar that makes sense for you and your brand. A lot of the times you will find this conflict where maybe you're starting to tailor stuff a little bit more towards yourself. And Michelle, this might resonate with you, and not so much the brand. You got to take a step back, think about the brand, and give yourself time for that creativity. We like to do content calendars a month out. So we have all our ducks in a row. We're setting ourselves up for success. And also, you got to embrace the new technology. I know when Reels came out, I've always wanted to be a photographer. So the crossover here is hilarious, Colin, but or producer, or director, or something of that nature. And Reels came out, and I was like, okay, here we go. This is my chance. And just embracing that new tech, having fun with it, and implementing that with your brand, leading your partners, your clients through it, and getting out in front of it and being creative with it. Pivoting your strategy. So this is one for all marketing across the board, right? Don't have excessive hubris. Your plan's not the best thing ever. Your partners know best. You're here to help them. Pivot your strategy as needed. Are your engagements low? Does your partner want to do static, but you're saying video's doing better? Revisit the metrics, look at the numbers, and pivot on the fly, especially with social. It's vital that you're keeping track of numbers. We like to look at them after the end of each month. And we're honest with ourselves. Hey, we had a decrease in engagements. What's the reason for that? Maybe we had a paid partnership the month prior, and this month we're not doing anything paid. So just keeping track of those and pivoting your strategy. Next is taking breaks, which across the board, we should all take breaks in everything we do, but especially with social. So on a personal level, Apple, God bless them, implemented a tool where you can set the time, your screen time, which is a tool I like to use for social media, right? So from a mental health standpoint, it's good for you to take breaks, but it's also good for you to take a step back from what you're doing for your partner. So turn your brain off. Don't, oh, I just saw this, I saw that, I need to do this, I need to do that. Step away from your project. It's your piece of art. Give yourself time to think, regroup, come back to it tomorrow. Taking breaks is so important, especially with social. And that leads kind of into the next point, bleeds over to this, which is quality versus quantity. So quality is everything. Quantity, you're just going to inundate people. People are going to start seeing this brand again, like I'm deleting them, or I'm just going to ignore them. I'm going to mute them. And that might have been your best deal, your best thing for that consumer. And it might have been your most quality piece of content, but they missed it because you were inundating them with the quantity of content. So with quality, we're really about setting a cadence. You can even go online yourself and go into Google and say best time to post during the week, and you'll get a search right there telling you the best time to post for your brand. So just keeping up with that cadence, making sure you're sticking to your brand aesthetic and voice and being true to that through your quality is everything. So digital, not to be outdone by social. So digital is right there. I think every single day there's a new tech advancement. It's the number one thing in the news cycle we're always reading about is tech and digital. In this sense, in this case, we're really talking about websites, email marketing. So Michelle mentioned this too, but email marketing, it just makes sense. The average ROI through email marketing is $36 gain for every dollar spent. It's a way to stay engaged with your loyal customers, consumers, people who have signed up. You've gotten their information in some way, shape, or another, keep them engaged. And that's another thing too with cadence with email marketing is being smart about it. Maybe once a month, what are we going to highlight this month? Do we have a new happy hour coming up? Do we have a special? A great graphic to really pull them in. Oh, this is impressive. I want to click on this. So some clickable links that look good. And just being creative there. And having that kind of replicate your social and overall brand aesthetic as well. Next hard and fast rule is read, read, read. With digital, like I said, there are advancements every day. I'm so sick of hearing about AI. It's probably, I saw iRobot too many times as a kid, but literally I can't state this enough. Read up on digital. There's new advancements every single day. Even if you're just glancing it, there's plenty of free marketing newsletters, subscriptions that you can subscribe to and read up on them because it's so important, especially with digital marketing. There's always new stuff coming up. It's a great way to ensure that you're maintaining your business and growing it in a way that aligns with how digital is progressing. Next is claiming listings and monitoring them. So this is a big one. I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, we're out there on the internet. It's online listings, first off, are free marketing. Second off, if someone goes to call your phone, the phone number is not correct. Okay, that's not good. Then they go to click on your link to your website. You don't have a website. Website's not working. Your place is out of mind. They were going to order from your restaurant. They were excited to go to your restaurant. And guess what? Now they're on to the next thing and they might not be coming back. So monitoring those listings is so vital. It's so simple. It's so basic. Setting aside, okay, 4 to 5 p.m. every Thursday. I'd probably do it more than that, but at least one day a week, we're going to have either our agency, someone in-house, check our online listings, make sure everything looks good, everything checks out, and test those links. It's extremely important. That's across Google Business, Yelp, TripAdvisor. All those places garner thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of eyes. And it's so important to keep those profiles up to date. Use Yelp. I know I think we've all badmouthed Yelp at some point in our lives, if not every day. I'm looking at you, Michelle, especially. Don't discount the power of Yelp, right? The facts are stubborn on this one. It continues to be one of the largest drivers in traffic to websites and reservation platforms out there. And there's a reason why it's been around for so long. Use it. Respond to reviews. Again, I feel like I'm poaching now at this point. I should have gone first. But especially the bad ones, So we're in the service of making people feel good, of hospitality. Reach out to the nastiest and they might become the friendliest. They might've had a bad day and they said, you know what? My husband left me. I have to take my dog to the vet. I gotta, I had the carbonara was not al dente. Like I'm going to write a review and I'm going to trash them. So I'm taking out my frustration. You reaching out to them, getting their email if you can, personal information. It might not even be as drastic as saying, hey, come back in, we'll do X, Y, Z. It can start with a simple interaction of, I'm so sorry to hear this, would love to amend it. And those are the most important ones. And then of course, the good reviews as well. Respond to every review. So important. All right, halfway there. Hopefully I'm speaking slowly enough. I'm totally biased, but I truly think PR is one of the most undervalued and underappreciated ways to grow and maintain a brand. It's working in PR agencies for a long time and going into a full service marketing agency, I can tell you that the AVE, which is add value equivalency, you'd be shocked by what PR can do for you as it pertains to just basically outside of the retainer, the free advertising it essentially garners for your business. With that, and this is for PR pros and then also for businesses too, as you look to assess your agencies and what's working, what's not working, making sure they're doing their homework. So don't pitch blindly. You know, a lot of these agencies and people, I know I've been guilty of it early on in my career, is you're building exhaustive lists, pitch lists, you're looking for roundups, you're looking to ensure that you're hitting as many reporters as you can that makes sense, right? But the worst thing you can do is send a reporter who only covers new restaurant openings a trending piece on beverage cocktails. That doesn't make sense for them. That's an instant way for them to say, this person didn't read up on me. They didn't do their research on Muck Rack or Cision. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm not answering their email again. Do your homework. Next is lead with the why, and your subject line is everything. So PR is a sale. It's a sale that doesn't see a commission, which is unfortunate, but lead with the why and the subject line. Your subject line is going to hook the reporter, get them to open up your email, and then your why, your hook of your pitch, is going to entice them to write about it. There's a million other happy hours going on. Why should I write about yours? Someone just came out with a similar cocktail. What makes yours special? You always have to have the why in there and keep it concise. And this goes in kind of to the next point with keep it simple. If your story is worth telling, the reporter will tell it. And that's another thing where as partners, as agency partners, and then also as owners, restaurateurs, we got to be honest with ourselves too. There might be something that's really cool. It might be a good marketing idea, but it might not be worth the story. And that's okay. That's fine. At the end of the day, the consumer, as long as it's resonating with the consumer, that's great. But it might just not be a place for it in the Trib or Choose Chicago or Do 312, and that's okay. Move on, listen to advice, and if you feel strongly enough about it, find a way to tailor the story with your agency so it's worth telling. Flattery is key. And reporters, just like all of us, are humans, and it's important to be human. And with that comes flattery. So as storytellers, they love when you reach out and say, hey, you know what, I read about this piece, and you create a personal connection, or you might follow them, invite them in to meet your company, to do a Q&A, invite them into the restaurant to try a new dish, to do a media dine, offer a comp meal. Flattering the reporter is key. And this bleeds into my other tip as well. Reach out before you need anything. I know we have a million things on our to-do list. The last thing we want to do is reach out for something that doesn't present ROI right away. But down the line, this will do so much for you. Reach out before you need anything. Pick their brain about something, invite them in, like I said, have them have a meal. Media dines are something we love to do here at Kinship, a number of other hospitality agencies as well. It's just such an important tool, the media dine. Get them into the space, entice them, get them to tell their own story. You might have had a plan for a new dish or this or that, but getting them to come in and try it for themselves, they might be like, hey, you know what? I actually love the foie gras. I was not expecting that at all. I have a roundup coming up on this. I'm going to include it here. So that's really important to keep in mind. And now last but not least is our marketing discipline. So 5 weeks at least is our rule of thumb here. And this is for programming and partnerships specifically. Obviously working with larger brands, having planned Super Bowls before, 6 to 8 months planning, we got to get a little more nimble in the restaurant hospitality space. So 5 weeks at least. This ensures that you have time to get the announcement out, to get follow-up emails out to reporters from a PR standpoint, get a social cadence going, send out your digital newsletter e-blast, maybe have a follow-up e-blast, ensure your website is up to date and maintained, and then crossing off your checklist of marketing tools during that 5-week march up to launch. Second is program for partners, not for you. This is what I was saying about social as well. There's so many times, I think we've all been guilty of it, definitely in the agency space, of wanting to find partnerships that we love. Oh, I really want to work with Nike, or I really want to work with this brand or that brand. Program for your partners, not for yourself. This isn't about you, it's about them. And you'll find sometimes people are getting a little pushy, or one of the things that I absolutely hate is finding a partner who does great. And I'm kind of, oh, let's see which partner wants to accept this partnership. I'm going to present it to two people. No, you find different partners for different people. If they do well, then you move on and say, we had a great experience with this partner. We'd like to present it for this opportunity. Never double dip. Personal preference of mine. Old is not out. Classic is not out. We'll change that to classic. Classic is not out. So one of my favorite pieces I actually read recently was about the chopstick holders at Tao and how people are stealing them. And I think it was the most stolen items in the city or something from restaurants. That fun little collateral that's been around forever. And now it's a great way. I'm not saying to send out 1 million flyers and, shove something in the paper boy's bag, but it's really important to still employ those old marketing tools. They still work just as well. I know I talked about social and digital, but keep with the old too. Don't overthink it. I don't want to put myself out of a job right now, but most of the time, you know what the answer is to the marketing idea. It's just being bold and brave enough to speak it into existence. It's looking around, not having too much pride, and taking a step back and saying, okay, actually, that makes sense. I see what they're doing over there. Let's try and adapt it. Anytime you're starting to get crazy, wonky, wild ideas, 1% of the time it'll work. 99% of the time it'll flop. Don't overthink it. Stick to the basics. Finally, 2 is better than 1. And this is just from a partnership standpoint. If you have a partnership, always make sure that they're hitting up their email list. They're including you in their newsletter for the partnership. They're including you on their social. You're cross-collabing on social media. You're ideally, obviously the partnership has to make sense, but hitting 2 different demographics, different consumer bases, and double the eyes across, right? So that's always vital, is making sure that when you're doing a partnership, 2 is better than 1, other partners holding up their end of the bargain, and you're getting double the views, double the eyes out there. So those are my tips. I know we have 3 minutes left.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. We barely have time for questions, but let's try to get a few in really quick. First, I'm going to send this over to Michelle and Colin. A question from Brian is, what % of sales is a good level from your marketing budget?
I mean, we're at like somewhere between, typically 1% is our marketing budget, right? of sales?
Yeah, 1 to 3%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it really depends a little bit on what your sales are, but
Yeah.
we tend to try to at about 1%, 1 to 2%. I would prefer 10, but people in charge of the money say no.
Got it. Yeah, and obviously, as you said, it varies depending on the restaurant.
James,
And
what do you tell people?
There's realistic, which is what you just said, but yeah, like 2-3%, you're golden, right? But realistic 1 to 2%.
Yeah.
Now this question is for both of you. James, I'll let you hit it off first. How do you approach an influencer and what do you offer them?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 ways to do it, right? So I think the first thing you need to look at is their actual following, what they're posting. You need to do thorough research on their feed. Do they make sense for you, first off? So once you've established that research, usually they'll have an email, like a direct Linktree email, or DM. What usually happens with us is the influencer will approach the restaurant if they want to come in, and we'll field those requests. If you're directly going after somebody, there's usually an email. These influencers are all entrepreneurs at this point. And what you offer them, you want to start with a comp, get them in with a comp, and avoid payment if possible. Trade is usually the best way to go. It's not the most realistic, and you got to look at the follower count. So if you're looking at 100,000 followers, you're going to probably be expecting to pay, obviously, comp as well. And then some of those more mid-tier, lower tiers, really go for the comp, offer the experience, make sure they feel special. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these people just want to feel special.
Is that typically your experience, Colin and Michelle?
I couldn't agree more. I actually, James, you're right on point. And for our experience, I typically don't look at the larger number influencers because I don't like paying. I always go to trade first. And we've even set like, 2 apps, 2 salads, 2 entrees, a cocktail for each guest. We do for 2 people. Please make sure to tip we always say gratuity is not included in the trade. Please make sure to leave gratuity for your staff member because that's really important. I like the more micro influencers. I feel like because they're still building, they're still hungry, and there's something about that that's attractive to me. So no pun intended with the hungry.
I'm still thinking about that carbonara. And I want to thank everyone for attending today, especially our panelists here, James, Colin, Michelle.
Thank you.
Turnkey,
Thank you.
Gene and Georgetti, Kinship, thank you, and our partners at Cook County Small Business Source. And thank you for everyone attending this webinar today. You will get everyone's contact information as well as the slide deck and a recording of this shortly thereafter today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kara.
Have a good
Bye.
Thursday. Take care.